Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name's Anna Baytosh. I'm a co-founder and chief operating officer of Artifex Technologies, where we are reimagining the way that 3D space is documented. We're creating solutions for those who visualize the built environment within construction and architecture. And we as a group have figured out a way to expedite their as-built drawing process. So when an architect steps on site to do an as-built drawing of a 2,000 square foot house, let's say for a typical bathroom remodel or a home renovation, they typically spend about 2 hours measuring the space with standard tools, let's say a standard laser distance measurer or a measuring tape. Our surveys of architects tell us this time is actually really important for them to understand the space before they start design. But the problem is that then they go back to the office and they spend about 10 hours translating these measurements into CAD. This is a time-consuming bottleneck, a low revenue producer. It's often prone to human error, and there is a lack of enjoyment. Architects would rather be spending their time designing higher value projects than drawing and redrawing buildings they've been hired to recreate anyway. That's why we've created the AFX10. The first smart, handheld, LiDAR-enabled laser distance measurer that fits seamlessly into their workflow and automates their drawings for them. We see it as a direct replacement for a tool that's likely already in their toolbox that they know how to use, but it sees spaces the same way architects do. This is how it'll work. An architect will take it on site, measure the same way they normally will. The AFX10 picks up metadata as the architect moves through the space, and then by the time the architect gets back to their desk, CAD-ready editable floor plans representing the built environment will be ready for download. We see that contractors and interior designers also suffer from this bottleneck, and we quantify this as about 200 million design professionals throughout the world. And this equates to, at our lowest package pricing, $33 billion in annual recurring revenue, just to give you an idea of our total addressable market we're working with. Our business model is a one-time hardware purchase, essentially sold at cost, because the value is truly in our software, this data conversion system. We'll charge a monthly fee, scaling based on drawings per month. And we believe this B2B approach is the best possible way so that these construction professionals can pick their packages based on drawing volume. And we're the right team to do it. This is Elijah Williams. He's my co-founder and CEO. He got his blended master's and bachelor's in architecture. He's an architecture professor at New York Institute of Technology, and he's worked at several architecture firms and has seen this bottleneck at each one. I'm Anna Baytosh. I'm a co-founder and COO. I have my MBA from Cal Poly, and I head the team with day-to-day operations, business plan implementation, and marketing and partnership strategy. We've got a great group of people who are mentors and counselors in architecture, engineering, and technology. We're currently raising a SAFE with 100K in lead already committed to grow a team over the next year to hit these 3 milestones. We plan to get customers for our software and gain revenue. We plan to add customers to the AFX10 pre-order list to launch by the end of the next year, the hardware piece, and sign a distribution deal with the manufacturer so that we can scale.
All right, we're gonna.
Thank you.
Perfect timing. I'm gonna open it up for questions.
So in terms of where you are right now, you're in your pre-revenue, pre-launch, but do you have
Correct.
any customers lined up? Do you have a sense of your price point?
So we have, last summer, we asked 10 early adopters to evaluate the hardware and we, on design, usability, and functionality. So that was kind of like our alpha one. Now we have 30 early adopters who are evaluating the next iteration of that design. We're taking them through a workflow experiment and collecting data on their consumer behavior and implementing that from there. We're currently working with a potential partner to launch beta Q4 of this year, and that will be revenue generating.
And do you have a sense of, because this is a time saver, right? So this is a efficiency play for your customer.
Correct.
How much time are they saving? How much is it worth to them in terms of ROI?
So we haven't launched an MVP yet. So part of this raise is going through those development stages to figure out how much time we can truly save them.
So just maybe spend a little bit more time on the hardware ultimately. You know, is it just like a single stream LiDAR, or
Correct.
is it multi-stream that's like gathering a lot of data at once? Or are they having to like move it around? Like just trying to understand how they're using it in practice.
Yeah, so it's a single stream directional LiDAR sensor, and it's exactly what they're used to using with the standard laser distance measure.
Right.
It's not one of those like 3D scanning situations.
And then is the idea that the data is getting collected actually on the device, or are you having to connect to, you know, a laptop or something like that? Because I imagine it's gigabytes of data at least, if not terabytes.
So it is actually a really small data file. It is currently
Really?
run locally, but we're planning on running it on browser, on web, so that they can access it from wherever they are.
It's a question on the software side. Do you have an integration layer to the likes of AutoCAD or other CAD softwares that uploads it directly?
Yeah, so our early adopters tell us that they prefer a download to DWG file so that they can throw it in whatever software they're working with. Some contractors use kind of like a, you know, magic CAD software, and that's completely different than Autodesk, for example. So we do it based on file size that they download and can integrate wherever.
Based on the current form factor, how often you need to recharge it?
I'm sorry.
How often you need to recharge it, battery lifetime, based on the current form factor?
Once a week is what we have right now.
Okay.
So on the team, your co-founder, the CEO, is he full-time running the company or
Yes.
full-time? So he's
Full-time running the company, teaches one class a week to stay connected to both technology and architecture over in New York.
What is the area that you can cover and create a 3D model of? The range distance?
Oh, the distance.
For
So
sensors.
so that depends on the directional LiDAR sensor we're using. So right now we're using a component that's off the shelf. It's the cheapest LiDAR sensor we could find, and that's a hardware cost of about $199 to create the whole unit. But then that scales based on how nice the LiDAR sensor is.
Is the plan to have multiple models with different LiDAR sensors, or?
Yes, but the long-term play is software focused. So we find that in our existing the existing solutions are, let's say, Bosch and DeWalt in the top left-hand corner. So that's no automation. That's your typical tools. But then we have Matterport and Trimble, which are awesome technology, and those are those big 3D scanners. But architects complain about the output. They have to spend hours tracing over the output. So essentially, we just marry the modern technology with the workflow they prefer. However, some architects do like the scanner. So we're creating our software to eventually integrate with these systems.
So just a clarification perhaps for me, is the person that measures the same person that draws, or are they different people in your experience?
It depends. So our early adopters are sole practitioners or 1 to 10 people in a firm. So they're truly doing everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reason I say that is, would you look to integrate with the likes of DeWalt and Bosch
Absolutely. Yeah.
into their tools? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure these brands have stood the test of time when it comes to those measurement devices and builders devices. So I think that would be a smart play as opposed to introducing something else that they're not used to.
Absolutely. We're not trying to beat out anybody on this slide. The idea is to eventually integrate into these systems.
The main and most practical use cases are indoor.
Correct.
Then ultimately the software, because it sounds like you're really anchoring around the software being the differentiator at the end of the day. If you think about, okay, what piece is your software doing that like you're not doing in CAD, for example? Because initially when you started, I would just assume this is all about just kind of data integration into a CAD work stream ultimately. But it sounds like there's actually like a value creation piece in there before getting to CAD.
Correct. So there's an automation of where the walls are in relation to each other. So that 10 hours that I showed on the second slide, architects have to do that by hand right now. So the idea being that it would put up their walls, and so then they would be in CAD and they would just, throw on the windows and doors and that sort of thing and make adjustments. But we would make that outline.
I have one more. Is there ambitions to go beyond LiDAR to 3D type vision to do more complex environments and maybe top down, because there are solutions out there where you can map out a physical area and you get it out into the virtual world directly in real time. So you can, if you're in a room, you can map out the area with 4 cones and suddenly you're in a VR room with those same measurements. Are there ambitions to go into that space in years to come?
So we are aware of how impressive these existing solutions are with that 3D scanning and VR technology. We're realistic about the fact that we're not going to beat those people to market. They've already spent millions of dollars developing that. However, we would integrate our systems, that data conversion of measurement data to reality for a floor plan to represent the built environment. That's where that would integrate.
I know you mentioned you had a plan to file the patent by the end of the year. Is that on the hardware, the software, the incorporated system?
Yeah, a provisional patent application filed by the end of this year that covers the software conversion system.
That's basically taking the LiDAR data and converting it into those basically rudimentary drawings. Yeah.
Correct. So we're not drafting the patent so that it's specific to LiDAR data. It's more around the idea of this measurement data being converted into a visualization of what's around.
Does this do one floor at a time if you're in a multi-story dwelling?
So that's what part of the next year is doing. So launching beta will likely be able to do one room at a time, visualized over kind of like a panel, if you will. But figuring out where the device is in relative positioning is our next big technological feat.
All right, any further questions from our panel?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.